Every life has a story, and every story is worth sharing. Your story, my story, and our story speak of victory and defeat, joy and sorrow, resilience and vulnerability. They are not just our story, they are Christ's story in us. They are Kingdom Stories from Down Under.
Imagine growing up as a pastor's kid in South Africa, and then as a teenager to move to Australia to start it all over again. The pressure, the changes that comes with it, and also the performance that is expected of you. And then you have to lead the youth, and then you have to run rallies, and then you have to build a new campus and a new church and be part of making history in the northern suburbs of Perth in Western Australia. Well, I don't know if you can imagine all that, but that's exactly what my guest tonight has had to deal with when he came to Australia, and he's in the mix of it all right now. His name is David Pawson, and let's welcome him to Kingdom Stories from Down Under. Welcome, David.
Great to be here, Pastor. Great to be here.
I didn't know exactly how to introduce you, but man, what a story, eh?
Yeah, it's been an awesome
Today's your birthday. I can't not give that away.
Yeah, my birthday, exactly.
And between guys, we can ask how much it is. If you're a girl, I would never ask you how much. How old you are?
29.
29. Okay,
today.
so just before the big 3.
Yeah, just before that age, Jesus was. So
yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing.
And you're not losing your hair, so you must have your mom's genes.
Must be. So I ain't going to.
I was pretty bold by putting that. I was losing it. You know, I married just before my 30th birthday. I married at 29, so maybe it's coming this year.
Coming soon, yeah. I'm trusting.
Are you doing it before the 30th?
Before
birthday?
30th, you'll see. So, but you know, God has the right one in the right time.
Yeah.
So better to be patient and wait for the right one.
Well, put it this way: I met my wife like in January, and I was married to her by December.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take long.
Quick mover.
Yeah. Once you know what you want, you know,
yeah.
It's great. So David, you came from South Africa now. What? 5 years ago? 6 years ago?
6 years ago. Yeah.
You just became a citizen, didn't you?
Yeah, last year during the year of COVID, 2020. So that was a great positive. So to become a citizen. So great that part of the journey's over. So
do you identify as an Australian now?
Definitely, but man, not to sound cliche, but first and foremost, a child of God, kingdom citizen.
Yeah. And
definitely identify as an Australian. But obviously, there's the South African roots.
Yeah.
Technically a dual citizen.
Yeah.
South Africa and Australia.
Can you keep both citizenships?
Yeah, you can.
That's great. So you've got both passports.
Both of them.
And valid. That's great. So where did it all begin for you? Whereabouts in South Africa did you grow up?
So I was born in Vicksburg in the Free State,
okay.
Or as they call it in Afrikaans, the Vrystaat.
Okay.
So the Free State. Pretty much moved around quite a bit with my family, as my father was pastoring, planting different churches. So would have moved maybe from Vicksburg to Johannesburg, and then I think, if I can remember, from there to Kimberley, where my father planted a church, which is a great CRC Christian Revival church there now.
Yeah.
And from there to Cape Town,
where
he planted another church, another CRC church there.
And then CRC stands for
Christian Revival Church. So a flourishing, phenomenal movement that's busy happening in South Africa and throughout the world.
Very apostolic,
very evangelistic as well. Yeah. So we have a big emphasis on leading people to Jesus' salvations. And we've seen it, throughout our churches, internationally. And that's pretty much the driver of our church, as we say, to win the lost at any cost.
Yeah.
So,
So you've got win, mend, and...
Mend and build.
So
win the lost, mend the nets, which is raising up leaders, equipping the saints, and then building one church in many locations.
Wonderful. That's a good the way. How you work out your vision, which is wonderful.
Yeah. So
and you've got an older sister, haven't you?
Oh, younger sister.
Younger sister. Sorry.
Yeah, younger sister. Phenomenal singer. Wonderful.
She leads the worship in your church.
Yep, absolutely phenomenal. So.
But you're very close. What's the age difference?
3 or 4 years.
3 or 4
I
years,
think.
okay.
Yeah, 3 or 4 years. 4 years probably now since
She's
I
got a
just turned
powerful
29.
voice, man. She's
Very
a worship.
powerful, so gifted,
Yeah,
brilliant singer.
yeah. She compliments
Yeah.
the family.
No, exactly, and compliments me since
Yeah.
I love preaching, and she can sing for
Was
me.
she tough
so-
on you when you were small?
I was tough on her, but yeah, we very interesting relationship. We push each other, we stimulate one another, you
Yeah.
know. So, but as the Bible says, iron sharpens iron.
So she's
I love her
she's an iron woman.
exact strong girl,
Yeah.
very strong. But I think in my family, you got to be strong.
Yeah.
You know, there's no place for weakness. You know, it's pretty ruthless,
Yeah.
but in the best of ways.
So you moved around quite a bit with mom and dad. What were the challenges in your childhood?
Well, I think, to be honest, very, very little. I know a lot of people, when they do move, there are challenges, but I think my mom and dad were just brilliant at their work. They really modeled parenting, and through that, every transition was just so smooth.
Yeah.
We always saw it as part of the work of God.
Yes.
So whenever we moved, there was always purpose. There was always mission and vision behind it.
And they involved you in that decision making.
100%. No, well, actually, not
Not
even.
in the
So,
decision, but at least in the journey.
yeah, in the journey that we were doing this together.
Yeah.
And I think whenever you move or shift in life based on purpose,
Yeah.
I mean, that's really the thing that's going to establish you, solidify you, and strengthen you in those decisions, as opposed to moving because you're running away or you're just trying to find greener grass on the other side. But when it's really linked to purpose,
Yeah.
that gives it meaning. It gives it. You can't really compare it as opposed to a lot of people who run away.
And you understand the call, and that's why you're undeterred, basically, on
Exactly.
the journey.
Yeah, so that was instilled in us from a young age, that we're willing to move, we're willing to trade places, as it were.
You would
give
have
certain
lost
things
quite
up.
a few friends along the way because of that, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You made friends easily.
Definitely. Oh, I do make friends. But it's important to make the right friends.
Yeah.
So it's something I become more conscious of. And yeah, you do lose friends because you lose contact, you lose touch. Even with Facebook and Instagram and all that, you
it's not
still
the same.
lose touch.
Yeah.
It's not the same face to face.
Yeah. Did you have a patch in your teenage years when you had questions and doubts and
More
trying to find yourself?
Yeah, I would say my teenage years were pretty strong.
Yeah.
In that I had a lot of opposition in school, being a Christian.
Yeah.
And I suppose it's just my makeup, the way God has made me. When I have opposition,
That's when you
I
become
rise to
stronger.
the occasion, like I become stronger. So the way I find that I operate many times is through opposition.
Yeah.
And that strengthens me. So actually, you know, as a teenager, sure, there's some questions here and there. But firstly, the opposition strengthened me. And secondly, and I think this was a key component of, godliness in my teenage years, was the example of the leaders around me in church and my parents. So whenever I looked at them, the men of God, women of God in my church in South Africa, that's where I grew up as a teenager, and my parents, the world always paled in comparison to them.
Yeah.
So there was just a stark contrast between the two. And so I always knew, this is the right way.
You had a high esteem for them.
Exactly. And when I heard their testimonies, their stories of how they had encountered God, I just knew this is the right way.
Yeah.
But then in terms of going through a patch, when I left school,
18,
19 years old, I went through a rough patch.
Still in South Africa.
Still in South Africa.
Yeah.
Still in South Africa.
Where were you, in Johannesburg?
At that time I was
Cape Town.
in Pretoria. And that was more like philosophical questions I started to have. But also in terms of relationship with God, you know, God has no grandchildren.
No.
We all have to experience and encounter God for ourselves.
Yeah.
We have to really meet Him. So although in my teenage years I saw the reality of God in the lives of others, I needed the reality of God in myself.
Yeah.
I needed to experience God. So really a cry came from me. I was like, God, you know what? I've heard about you from my parents and those amazing men and women around me, but I haven't heard your voice. I haven't experienced your presence or seen your miracles.
Yeah.
And so that led me into this rebellious philosophical stage where I was just like, you know what? What's the point of even going to church? You walk in there, raise your hands, and you walk out the same person. It kind of became this, there's no point to it, really. Yeah. And so that led me into more rebellious stage, although I still knew, okay, it's the truth.
Yeah. But you love the questioning part of it.
Exactly.
Were you reading books? Were you watching videos? Some New Age stuff or more doubts? Or
I think there was a time I started reading a lot of philosophers.
Yes.
And I just naturally, I'm a thinker. So I love studying. I love learning. I think a lot.
Yes.
I try to, engage with deeper questions, stuff that a lot of people don't want to deal with or they try to avoid.
Yeah.
I start thinking about. And, when you don't have the right guidance, like not a lot of people, when you start thinking at a deep analytical level, philosophical level, not a lot of people around you can actually help you through that. So pretty much no one could help me. But then, it's also spiritual warfare.
Oh.
And then emotions are involved in it as well. And just you become clouded, especially as a young man. That can happen easily. Clouded in doubts, emotions, and wondering, God, why haven't you intervened in my life? Where are you for me?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people experience that. They say, God, where are you in my life?
Yeah.
And so I think that's really what was the source of a rough patch, a rebellious stage.
So how did you blink out of it? How did you come out of it? What happened?
Well, I'd say this, that as I said before, I always knew this is the truth.
Yeah, of course.
But I knew that I was rebelling against the truth.
Yeah.
So one thing I never stopped doing was going to church.
Okay.
Although many times I would sit in church and I would hate it.
Yeah.
I would ask myself, why am I even here?
Yes.
Part of it was the deep conviction that I was feeling. But I would just ask myself, why am I here? But I still went. Because I still knew it's the truth.
Yeah.
And the world has nothing on this. And
it wasn't fully truth for you, but you knew it was the truth.
Exactly. I knew it was the truth, but I hadn't experienced or lived this truth to that extent. So I kept on going, and I just remember one day I was in church, 12th of March, I still remember the 12th of May, still remember the day, 19 years old, or 20, I would have probably been 20 at that stage. So 2012.
Yeah.
And as I was sitting in church, I just felt this conviction come upon me. No one was preaching, it was the announcements, and this conviction hit me, and it just said, you are responsible. You're responsible for those around you, for the people around you, because at that stage, as I drifted from God, all my childhood friends who grew up in church with me had also drifted from God.
Yeah. So
and we had all gone astray.
Who were pulling others with you.
Exactly. So we had all kind of experienced the same thing, kind of disillusioned. We'd grown up in church. We all loved God, if anybody asked us, but I think we all became slightly disillusioned. So we then started pulling each other down. But as I sat in church, I just felt this conviction. Man, you're responsible, David. And even knew it was God. I didn't think of that. I just had this conviction. And immediately I called those friends around me and I said, guys, we've got to change. We've got to do something.
Yeah.
And we made a plan. We said, listen, we're going to meet, I think it was the next day or sometime in the week, on one of the mountains, one of the hills in the city of Bloemfontein, called Naval Hill. And we met up there. And I just said, guys, let's find a spot in the bushes here somewhere. Let's maybe try and pray. And we'll come back and we'll share. What do we think needs to happen? What needs to change? Yeah. So we all did that. We came back and we started sharing with one another.
Yeah.
And that really for me was this shift. And for a lot of my friends with me there. And from that moment, we just started stepping out.
Yeah.
We started meeting with each other regularly, praying with one another. And then we started doing radical things. I started getting up, some of my friends as well, get up on the street corner and begin to preach. We'd go into hospitals, begin to pray for the sick.
Yeah.
We started actually saying, God, you know what? We don't just want to hear about this, we want to live it.
Yeah.
And we started to see God do miracles. Amazing things started to happen. The supernatural started to break out. And that, for me, that was really the switch where things shifted.
So were you baptized already?
Already baptized, yeah. Already baptized. I was fully saved. like I said, loved God.
When did you get baptized?
I would have been 12, 13 years old.
Okay.
That's when I got baptized. Still remember the day. I can memorize. I can just reimagine it as I'm sitting here now. But yeah, probably 12, 13 years old.
Did you experience a feeling of the Holy Spirit, renewal kind of thing?
I think later on, or maybe even prior to that.
Yeah.
But I never really had. A lot of people have this amazing experience of infilling. I never had that.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the things that made me disillusioned.
Yes.
Because I had grown up in church and I didn't have any like real, let's say, physical encounters. Now I'm not saying you have to have that, but there were so many people, young people around me at that stage who had not grown up in church, who had not followed God at all. Then they had come to God, come to Jesus, and they had these amazing experiences with God. They would tell me about physical manifestations, and for me, this started to blow my mind.
Yeah.
I was like, man, I've been in church
I
my
deserve
whole life.
this just
What
as
about
much as you.
me? What about me, God?
Second great question, yeah.
I've been following you. What about me? So I'm sure early on I had maybe some kind of experience with God, but not to a great extent. Like I was hearing from other people, other young people, especially in their latter teenage years or early 20s, where I think it can have a profound impact.
Yeah.
So I never experienced any of that. But funnily enough, what I did experience when I stepped out was God working through me.
Yeah.
And I started to see the power of God through my life touching other people.
Yeah.
And they would have experiences, even though I wouldn't have.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say I've had, even to this day, any personal powerful encounters or experiences.
Yeah.
God has definitely done amazing things, but I've seen really the power being unleashed in the lives of other people as I step out and
What
preach
sort of
the gospel.
healing have you seen? Give us an example.
Some amazing things. One of the first healings I saw here in Australia was in one of our Bible studies. Young man there just came to the Lord recently at that time, and he was still trying to figure out should he get baptized or not. And he asked us for prayer, and for his shoulder. And I thought, well, like playing sports as I did it, just like what we call a niggle, shoulder, just a bit of a niggle. So we just laid hands on him, and I said, oh, like, how does it feel? And he pretty much almost started tearing up. And I thought, well, that's an overreaction for shoulder niggle. And he said, no, you don't understand. He needed pretty much like he lost his job because he injured his shoulder so badly. Yeah. And the doctors had told him he needed a shoulder replacement, like surgery.
Massive.
And right then God healed him totally. The next day he was doing handstand push-ups.
Wow.
And actually soon after that got his job back as a bricklayer.
Yeah.
So that was one of the right here. But in South Africa, when I pretty much just thrust towards God happened, really started seeing some amazing things. Probably one of the first major miracles. Me and my friends had gone out with our church, and we'd been handing out food parcels to the poor. And we started praying for people and started to see really God work and break out. But the next day we were filled with such confidence that me and my friend, a young man by the name of Duncan in Bloemfontein, he's a pastor there now. We walked out there and we were just like, man, bring us someone like who can't walk. Wow. And we walked in there, and a lady took us, and which we'd found out later was a witch doctor. Oh. And she said, well, here's this young person, he can't walk, pray for him. And when we walked up to him, we obviously saw he was paralyzed, and underneath his foot there rats had been eating him. So he had this massive open wound, but he couldn't feel anything. He would drag himself around, and every now and then I think they had a small wheelchair for him. We just started to pray for him, and we just lifted him up and started to walk with him. And about, I think, 40 to 60 people gathered, and they watched this in absolute amazement as we were just boldly praying for him and picking him up and walking with him. And they all gave their lives to God. And the witch doctor that took us there
he started walking, obviously.
Yeah, he started walking. But so it was almost like a gradual miracle. Because the Bible talks about the working of miracles. So it started off with like us picking him up, holding him. Then we just held his hands, and
Yeah.
then he was walking as we held his hands.
Yeah.
And then seeing this, everyone was amazed what
Yeah.
was happening. That the Sangoma witch doctor said, "I believe in your God based on what I've just seen now." And so that was kind of like a gradual miracle that started to take place. But that for us
Yes.
at that time was just absolutely mind blowing.
Yeah.
Seeing something like this happen, and from that time we just seen God, man, working everywhere
Yeah.
in amazing ways. And even as you say this, I realize we even forget. I've forgotten a lot of what God has done. And we shouldn't. We should remember and keep it in our memory banks, all these healings and miracles.
It's interesting because the Bible is full of them, and they're very personal. It's like the records that we see in the Bible. They're very personal.
Exactly.
The lady with this issue, the man
100%.
with this. It's very particular because what happens is, it's one thing to say, I've seen hundreds of miracles in my life, but it's when you say, there was a man that couldn't walk, and we lifted him up and he started walking. All of a sudden, that changes the whole equation.
Yeah, 100%.
Because it's personal. Now we can relate to something, and I think it's very powerful what you're sharing here, because that would have propelled you in your faith to carry on, and it would have proven to you who God was, and the fact that many other people got saved.
Yeah.
That's even more of a miracle
Exactly.
than the lame man walking.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Just the fact that people came to faith and that witch doctor came to
100%.
faith, which is beautiful.
No, absolutely amazing. And you're right. It's just every person has a personal story behind it, and sometimes we can just gloss over it as a statistic.
Yeah.
But there's people with real needs out there. That's exactly why Jesus came to die and was raised from the death, because of people and their individual stories.
What was it like growing up with such a strong character of a father? Obviously, your dad had a strong reputation in South Africa, and also he's a mighty warrior. When he gets on stage with the mic in his hand, things shake, man.
Yeah.
How did you feel? How did you look up to him while you were growing up?
Yeah, well, definitely. Look, my father, as I like to say, is a machine. So it's a term we used in South Africa. But growing up in South Africa specifically, a lot of the men of God, they are all military men. So they all fought in wars, literal wars.
Yeah.
And so one of the first things to understand about my father is that, yes, he's not only a spiritual warrior, but he's a physical warrior as well. He's been in wars.
Yeah.
And so there's a militancy there, which God has used for his kingdom.
Yeah.
So understanding that, firstly, man, I know my father. He's a military man. He's a warrior. He's been in battles, and I love that. It's something I look up to, and being a strong character. It's for me. I wouldn't have anything less.
Yeah.
So although, like I said earlier, iron sharpens iron. So it does bring. There are moments of strong conflict. There are a lot of those moments, but it's for the better.
Yeah.
So I've had as a young kid lots of hidings, discipline, strong discipline.
Yeah.
But it's part of the character formation, the development.
Yeah.
So with a strong reputation, strong character, strong purpose, drive, vision, that is, in my opinion, every single young man needs that.
Yeah.
There's many weak leaders around. If you even look at politics,
Yeah.
really, these leaders, there's nothing to aspire to. When you look at them, their character, the way they walk, talk, and speak, it's demotivational.
Yeah.
Especially when you look at the political field, where most of the public leaders for our nation.
Yeah.
But then, I'm fortunate enough that for me, I could grow up and see my father and emulate that and imitate him, that strength, and also the mighty men of God around him. So I think that strength, not only, like I said, being a military man, but also a man of God.
Yeah.
First and foremost.
Model,
exactly. Dad. And I think it's almost, it's a contradiction to be a weak man of God.
Yeah.
I think that's a contradiction, because
you can't be.
Even in your weakness, his power is made perfect.
Yeah.
And so there's strength that comes from being a man of faith, from being a man of God. And that, like I said, every young man needs that, should have that. Yeah. And also young women, they need strong father figures in their lives. And I think that's seriously lacking in this world today.
Oh, especially in Australia, the most probably
100%.
fatherless nation in the world.
100%. So for
You
me,
see it in your church.
for me, like, although the sparks fly every now and then, it's a benefit actually, because
Well,
I
you're
get
still in
sharper.
the mix. I mean, you're the youth leader
Yeah.
of CLC. Your dad is the senior pastor. So obviously, for you to remain there, you must see the purpose. You must see the desire.
Exactly.
You must see the call of God for you to remain there. While you are your own person as well. I mean, you're not living in the shadows of your dad. You are stepping up in your own calling as well, in your own
100%.
identity. So, now some of the things that you're doing at the moment, obviously you're leading the youth, but you're also leading some wonderful rallies in the city.
Yeah.
Like we had those Perth nights, which were
Yes.
fantastic. How did that come about?
Yeah, well, at the moment, there's two areas that I'm involved in. The one is Perth for Jesus with Pastor Vera Lim, phenomenal woman of God, and the team over there, which in past we've done rallies not only in the city, but also in places like Armidale the last few years, Armidale for Jesus, and now coming up Kwinana. We're going to do another rally this month, 27th of March. And then recently we had something called Jesus Nights.
Oh, Jesus Nights in Perth.
Jesus Nights in the city centre, which is also another one coming up on the 30th of April.
Wonderful.
So busy. But it's a phenomenal woman of God by the name of Shah Hodgkinson. Pretty much contacted me and asked me to be involved.
Beautiful.
So she's really the visionary there. And a great team, phenomenal worship team, team around supporting. And I think it's just through God connecting different relationships and realizing there's a bigger purpose. There's something that we need to many times cross denominational boundaries, church lines, to come together for the work of God, for the purpose of God. So it really, I would say, divine connections, God just connecting people. And obviously in that, I've got a great heart for like evangelism, the evangelistic outreach, the preaching of the gospel.
You've got a good team here. You've got some wonderful guys and girls in your mix as well.
Yes, 100%.
I mean, some really talented people.
Exactly.
In both evangelism, in music, in sound, lights, and skills, man. I mean, the skill set you have in your own mix is just amazing. I mean,
I mean, at our church, brilliant musicians, sound men, light men, light engineers, absolutely brilliant. And they're also part of these evangelistic outreaches into the city. So,
and you're doing a course in evangelism to lead up into that outreach.
100%.
And you've opened that to the whole city, not just your own church.
To the public. So we
and it's free, isn't it?
No, it's not free. There is a charge. So we're just hosting it.
Yes.
It's open to every Christian, every church. We're just hosting it. So 7th to 10th of April. Calling it the Revolution School of Evangelists.
Yeah, we've shared it all through
So really looking forward to that, because we trust in God that He's going to activate, mobilize evangelists in the city for the preaching, not just on the streets, because I think a lot of people, they relegate evangelism to going on the streets.
They don't fully understand what evangelism is.
Exactly. And so, I mean, if we're looking biblically,
it wasn't really done in rallies. It was more done from one house to house and person to person.
And publicly. So there was part of that. One person to one person, family to family, finding the man of peace. But also the public proclamation of the gospel. So goes hand in hand, and that's through every means possible.
Have a healthy balance of them all. Well, I think our cameraman will be doing the course as well now.
Good.
Which is wonderful. You also had a massive project in building the church. You are next door. You're just basically one block away. This was your dad's office. This was your youth center.
Exactly.
You know, my office was your dad's office. There's a lot of anointing here. So,
very much so. Good memories.
And obviously we changed a little bit of the landscape here. And
it's looking good.
The facility.
Looking really good.
But that project, that was a very, very courageous project. I mean, how big is the place? It's about 4,000 square meters, isn't it?
I'm not too sure. I should know, but I don't actually know. But big. It was a big project. Our auditorium, I'm sure we could seat up to 700-800 people comfortably. in that big facilities for kids church,
Yeah.
amazing amount of parking.
Yeah.
So yeah, phenomenal. And that was courageous step.
Such visionary your dad was.
Exactly. To step
and
out.
you just stood up in the gap there and went with him. And your mom is so strong.
No, powerful
she's a small
woman.
She's a small woman.
Yeah, dynamite comes in small packages.
Yeah.
So.
I love how your dad, she says to him, he says to her, no, he's okay. This guy's okay. Because initially there was a bit of tension when he introduced me to her, and she started, making sure that I was kosher in the relationship. And it's like your dad saying, no, I sussed him out already. He's all right.
My mom is a very, very discerning woman.
Yeah.
And she, back in South Africa, she was pretty much heading up the counseling.
Yes.
Over throughout all the churches there.
Yeah.
So works a lot with that counseling people.
So your whole family was captured in this, was gripped by this project, because this project was all consuming, wasn't it? Nor did you have the finance. I mean, to pay the lease there is an arm and a leg every month. So it was a stretch, massive stretch.
Yeah, well, we always, that's the thing about God. He never leads you to smaller places, always to bigger places.
I mean, he brings you from South Africa here to build something amazing, huge, with a new vision. After all your life, you've built places in South Africa, in rands, but now you got to do it in dollars without dollars.
Yeah, well, I think, firstly, that makes it easier because it's a first world country and like unemployment is almost zero.
Yeah.
But once again, God's always calling us to bigger things, greater things, and beyond ourselves. Because if we can do this all by ourselves, God's not needed.
Yeah, that's right.
So faith really does accomplish the impossible.
But this journey must have been tough on your dad and your mom, and even on yourself and your sister, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think there are moments where it's tough, but the will of God, it's always going to bring joy.
Yeah.
There's always going to be happiness and peace. And tough times do come, but as we say, tough times don't last. Tough people do.
Yeah.
So there's definitely moments of testing. There's definitely moments of, let's say, warfare externally, facing what you need to face. And I think anyways, for the people of God in the city, there are tough times as we advance the kingdom of God. It's been the biggest thing is we are in the will of God.
Yeah.
And that brings a certainty that money can't buy.
Yeah.
To know I'm in the will of God. Jesus hasn't left me. He's with me.
Yeah.
And we're gonna win.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Girls. How did you keep away from them for so long?
I think some.
I'm saying this because as a pastor's kid, obviously there's so many opportunities and so many girls look up to you. I mean, you're good looking, obviously, and you're young, and you got some muscles there, some aspirations, and some material that is stage material. How did you keep yourself uncontaminated? Let's say.
Yeah, so I think I've had one or two relationships here and there, but obviously realizing it's not the right one. I think it comes back again to teach a child in the way that he should go, and when he's older he will not depart from it. Just when it comes to women, my mother is a standard.
Yeah.
So
it's too high of a standard.
That's the point. So I was speaking to another young man who is turning 30 this year, and he was speaking about finding a wife, and he's like, David, one thing never do is compromise.
Yes.
And so the standard is high, and I'm not going to drop standards because when I look at my father, I think the biggest thing for him is he wants me to go further,
of course,
than he ever went. And by the grace of God, I will. I think that's just how it should be. Yeah. And so then it should be the same, let's say, for my wife.
Of course.
Going further and doing more than my mother has done. That's part of the legacy that they leave for us.
Yes.
So there's in no ways can I drop the standard and expect less, because I'm only believing for more, and I'm only dreaming of more, and to do more for the purpose and call of God.
It's good. It's good to have that high
expectation. When it comes, like I said, to women,
there's no fear, is there?
No fear, no, not at all.
Fear of failing, or fear of not hitting that high note?
No, I'm certain in the purpose and work.
I had a bit of a fear because in my teenage years, and not so much my teenage years, but in my 20s, I traveled the world extensively to do missions. And I saw a lot of pastors whose wives weren't really that fantastic. And I thought, man, I don't want to. I've got to be careful. I don't want to fail, man. I don't want that. So I was very careful. Yeah. So at about the age of 26, I made a decision that I will not date another girl, even though I had a few girlfriends before, until I find a woman that I want to marry. So I began praying and fasting for my future wife, not knowing who she was. And I would fast 1 day a week. And I didn't know that this journey was going to be 3 years. So
a lot of fasting.
That's over 150 days of fasting. But in that process, God was preparing me for marriage, not my future wife. I wasn't ready. I had to go. There was a lot of ego, there was a lot of self that I had to be crushed. And at the right time, at the appointed time, God sent Raluca in my life. And I believe God will send somebody that will complement, that will be a suitable helper for you.
Amen.
Now, you just graduated university.
I did.
A few weeks ago?
Yeah.
Months ago now?
Last year. I got my second degree and I've just started my third degree.
So what did you study? Your second degree now?
So, first degree studied a Bachelor of Commerce in Finance and Management. And then second degree, did a master's. It's in the field of practical theology.
Okay.
Now I've just started a law degree, Juris Doctor at UWA.
Wow. Wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, you've got to keep going. I'm still studying. I did my doctorate, but I've just enrolled in a course actually for this year as well. So I think continuous learning is very, very important. It keeps you on the edge. It's a lot of hours. I get up very early in the morning, and probably you do the same.
Yeah.
And you hit the gym, and you hit. You keep a balance, but. It does keep you sharp, keeps you focused, and you get somewhere in life, which is wonderful. What's the legacy you'd like to build in your lifetime?
Yeah, it's a tough question. There's a lot that God He's put on my heart, and I believe it will unfold in the right time. But it's obviously in fulfilling the call of God, the purpose of God. I'm seeing this on not just a local church level, where I feel a lot of the work of God has been relegated to where the church has become a subculture, with no influence in the spheres of society, socially and politically. But it's once again raising the people of God as a people, as a nation of faith that define themselves as the people of God, and not by their skin color, their citizenship, their ethnicity, their language, but wherever God leads me to, is that those people define themselves and see themselves as a unique people, chosen of God, and they influence their society in every way possible. So I would like to leave a legacy that touches not only the heart of man through salvation, but also the laws of man through reformation. The spiritual climate of not only churches but cities and beyond. However God would lead me in that to do that, but I'd like to see reformation in society.
Beautiful. And because today is your birthday, I pray that this thing will come to pass. I pray that this is the greatest gift that the Lord could give you.
Amen. Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us and sharing your story, and the story of your family, and the story of your faith, and the story of your church, and the future story which you're still writing.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here, and it's wonderful to have men of God and friends like you in the city, and I know together we're going to leave a lasting impact within the city and beyond.
Thank you. Well, friends, you've just heard a wonderful story from a young man whose life has been transformed by the power of God. He sees in the future a nation of faith, not a human nation in the sense of political nation, but a true nation of the people of God. From every race, from every people group, worshipping God and truly influencing society out there. What a legacy to build, and what a legacy to leave behind. I pray that you will be part of that legacy, and I want to be part of that legacy. If you enjoy this content, please distribute it, share it with other people, invite them to listen to it on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, YouTube, watch it. Also give us some star ratings, 5 would be ideal. And pray for us. This is Kingdom Stories from Down Under. I can't wait to see you next time.
Thank you for joining us on Kingdom Stories from Down Under. We'd love it if you would subscribe, rate, and share these stories with your wider community. And remember, every story is worth sharing, including yours.